Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Young Muslims or Muslim women all over the world, especially Indonesia, may emerge as an observer of ongoing social phenomena as an image that perhaps my Muslim friends are not aware of. I, through this simple channel, which cannot be decorated with a pressing edits because of my limitations, feel like I have to show the chips that without my friends realizing it. My friends have put them in, but physically and mentally. You can set automatic video language translation so you understand what I'm saying. Okay, I have several Indonesian friends from various religions. In Indonesia, she's a female nurse, a singer, and many Muslims too, of course, and several Christians who work as a content creator. We can respect differences in beliefs, and they are the few people who support me in conveying what I have to convey to you, especially young Indonesian Muslims, as well as in other corner of the world. Previously, this was my first video. My name had the initial AB, and my family, students, and friends mostly call me Mr. B because I study English literature and the lecturers and fellow students call me Mr. Maybe yes, I'm over 20 and under 30. I have lived in Indonesia for a long time, but I ask permissions to use English because this information is global. There are several things that make me wear this face covering because there are things that I don't want to hurt my Muslim friends all over the world. I'm completely sure you can understand because what's more important is what I'm going to say. Maybe this is also a suggestion. It also consider a criticism, and I agree that there is a change in generational attitudes which actually has the influence that some of the world's big groups and groups who don't like it or they are very deliberate and intend to destroy this hidden power. Where is that power? What powers mean? The answer is with you, young people of Islam, specifically Indonesia. The first question arises, is it because Indonesia is predominantly Muslims? Of course, one of the answers about it is correct. However, I will detail several phenomena that friends must react to and, if necessary, internalize. So I have divided this information so that it's easy to engage in its field. It will relate to each other, and friends will quickly understand where they ultimately lead us. This includes education that is spiritually destroyed but is considered normal, metaphysics, frequencies, cells, and genetics of the human body, basic science ages regarding hope from an early age from basic foundations that are mostly rare and damaged. It is rarely practiced, and the concept of social phenomenon regarding Indonesian youth is the biggest market for making Islam in this day and age not contractable, where everything is interrelated and several more brains of discussion. If you haven't had time to finish one video to link it all in one go, then I will continue in the next video. I start from where I should be. On my way I explain and convey the fact how good it would be to be accompanied by several social phenomena that occur, and as the years went on, civilization didn't improve, but on the contrary, internet. Do you know how this concept was created? In frequency science, we and God can be connected to each other through webs. So the human body is the biggest source of inspirations for creating the internet. So our bodies have the most sophisticated system science, the time when angels were created. Reading Surah At-Tin, it doesn't just mean that humans have advanced in shape and form compared to animals, angels, and other servants of God, but in it spiritually and physically we have that advantage. We both know and fully believe that times are going backwards. It's just been engineered by variations in technology so that it hypnotizes us that there is something more needed than our own truths. Truth is power. What kind of faith? It's clear That when we know the story from the time of Prophet Sulaiman when Queen Bilqis' palace was moved, meaning teleportations, the supernatural abilities that we see in the films are reference from the real world, and they know first and make it a weapon of mind destructions. Who are they? Just for yourself later, because I remind you once again that all the divisions in the fields that I will explain all have a purpose and continuity. This is a simple understanding, but people like to forget. We often understand as practitioners that the opposite is true, wherein the real world is impossible or something like that to happen or ever happen. The most basic reason is because God has adapted to the times and eras of civilization. But remember, by faith we must believe that such things have ever happened to creatures called humans. And later it will be proven whether we actually understand the basic concept of the power of the frequency between faith and truth when the real villain appears. He will come to bring rain and bring food according to his will as if he were God. And those of us who don't believe in such a concept is not a new thing that has ever on God's earth. We will leave it. So Indian films, cartoons, and all fictional novels that have the ability to make us take a break from the real world are important as a reminder that the real world is the reference, even more than that which has ever happened. So it is not understood as a film edit that the simple pleasing to the eye, like thriller films such as Superman, Batman, and other powerful scenes. Make it a reminder, even though what it sounds is not completely the same as what God has worked in previous ages. It's miracles, because miracles in this era are different, because it's not a fairy tale we say we believe, but in fact, in practical terms, we actually show that we don't believe by assuming that the power sounds later is something that doesn't exist other than in films. Okay, from the mind, there was a big influence and facet in becoming the biggest market. Their biggest market is manipulations of the mind of young people around the country. This information doesn't mean we have to abandon all abstract real things or objects, because I also use this media to convey information, so we are required to have as exemplified by the most influential people in the history of human life. He did invest in us and continue to use what these people create because they were indeed a nation that was given an advantage in terms of intelligence. So he appreciated and continue to use it as long as it has benefits for the people. And one thing he taught us in dealing with this is by providing filters or barriers. Digital was created for us to control, make things easier and expand the reach of our mind which may be difficult to channel and communicate with each other. But what happened? There is no difference between his people and theirs if their people themselves cannot control it. Instead, digital is what control their life and death. In connection with what I said at the beginning about the technology of the human mind and the internet center in our brains, that we can hold digital in real form. Why does it actually weaken the most sophisticated internet that exists in the universe that God created, which is in our spiritual mind? As a small example of this object, just going to a shop which is less than 100 meters away, you feel you have to bring this because this is a digital soul and actually this is dangerous. This is what they want when we have had our souls and minds stolen. So they take that faith by forming person who believe something smaller than our own thoughts. In fact, 3 hours a day is enough time to give this thing time, since it would steal something more expensive than this thing itself. What would it be? There is within us, not just thoughts, but a form of automatic system operations that can recover itself, namely our health. 3 hours doesn't count as time when you just carry it, but don't use it. This object will waken body cells because it is an imitation of the frequencies and waves of the human body. This is what is called metaphysical, not just physical. Now, before entering the advanced part, namely how to give control so that our children's early health is not stolen and we cannot truth his mind frequency again. Well, what was explained a little earlier is what is called metaphysical science. Well, it was actually not an accident or careless thoughts, but an intentional, a system that was deliberately set up to steal young people's strength, young potentials that would develop brutally when time management skills were very good, and in the end they succeed. Only a handful of young people realize this is subconsciously. In the realm of education, I have heard these views of people from other countries, countries that are said to be developed countries, superpower and so on, that Indonesia has a low education index. Is it true? Or is it a game of benchmarks that is deliberately created so that some power will continue to be lent and never rise again? Starting to understand how they think, we return to the original questions. What power is that? Is it possible that Indonesia could actually be a developed country, even separated itself from those benchmarks? What benchmark do I mean? Well, all of this is in the real estate, because the goal is the same, but in terms of health, education, and also social phenomena, the culminations of which is the young children's market that I mentioned earlier. I once watched a lecture by an Indonesian cleric on YouTube. He said that the essence of Muslim power is in young people. One of Indonesia's presidents also said that if the rise of civilizations lies in the strength of the younger generations, then the destruction of civilizations lies in the younger generations. When the most influential library in the world is destroyed, its knowledge is stolen, and something new is created based on the science so that the power can rise again in the future, and the country with the largest Muslim majority is certainly the market to prevent that resurrection. The time I mean is the present. Most of our young people are so weak, I'm sorry to say, very weak. I will show you some social phenomena that occur in their market. The market of young children which benefits them and harms civilization. And this is danger because it's considered normal and most parents, teachers, lecturers are weak in providing barriers or boundaries so that they are wise and honest in their lives. Previously, this was related to metaphysics. First, it said in the hadith that a country would emerge from the east which will experience a revival in a short time. What does it mean? This indicates that the weakness of Indonesians young people don't influence God's scenario in arranging the flow of life that He desires. But the problem is, do we want to be young people who are included in the weak group? You are weak in managing your time. Your sleep time is irregular. You have the feeling that you are stronger and weak all the time. You are the strongest in health among your friends. This is an excuse that your peace of mind is actually weak so you cannot regulate your own energy. We run away from the call to prayer and choose today's games that have become a basic need like food. I also play that game, but I can apply what Allah says in Surah Al-Asr. I remind young people that everything is also part of applying to the process. If I ended Indonesia is a superpower country that has been deliberately lulled into sleep because its young lives have been poisoned intellectually, consciously, and mentally, but I am also sure that this Muslim majority country is a country that will rise in a short time. I think I only need a few, so I want to be part of that group. If it's not Indonesia that is meant by the country from the east, then will we then have to turn around immediately, become fully aware and start to wake up earlier, go to bed earlier, prioritize health more, pay more attention to the importance of basic health knowledge for ourselves. Health does not exist. Relationship with aid. So as Indonesia's first president said, he only needed a few young people to change the world. But the problem is, what does that mean? Of course he is strong and kind, physically and mentally, has great concern. When a young person doesn't care about maintaining good health from an early age, then how does he become one of the young people in question? If he doesn't care about his own health, how can he care about something that is good enough to shake the world? Of course, it will take longer for the dream of revival to be achieved. So, be young people who are healthy in heart and body. Because being strong in your mind is not enough. Be strong. Have the courage to reject things that don't both benefit, such as the doctrines about health that you receive from an early age and in elementary school. If you study the science of genes, genetics and cells, you young people will not dare to buy a cigarette and use it as a substitute for gas delicious oxygen when inhaled naturally as a calmer for the mind. Maybe it's true that it doesn't have an effect when you have strong DNA. Even teenage girls who vent their cortisol hormones with food that hurts the stomach and at the wrong time. You don't realize that it will also have an effect on the next generations. Your children will be weak in terms of consciousness and biological energy. How many people ask, why do I get diabetes or cancer, even though I don't have grandparents or parents who have it? The answer is, in cell scan, this immunity and faith resonate with each other in the cells of our body. There is God's energy flowing, so through these cells, you can delay yourself from becoming sick with God's permissions and will. Don't underestimate the power of cells, because they are small creatures that live and support the growth and development of our bodies. It's not that your parents didn't have the disease so you experience it, but the answer is simple. The disease is just a seed and hasn't appeared yet, and it is you, your children, and grandchildren who will receive the growth of the disease seeds that have not yet emerged. Cells, DNA, also have God's signature. Within this there is a seed of life. It's interconnected. We are interconnected with previous people, our ancestors. So this is what the most influential person in history said with the sentence, all Muslims are brothers. Everything can be inherited through cells. The sentence can be explained biologically, so that is the reason why he is a human who must be the healthiest human on the face of the earth. This is called Nur Muhammad. I will discuss this more deeply in the realm of metaphysics in the next video. For this time, what you all needed to understand is God's oxygen is the most expensive piece that you exchange for something you call smoke of pleasure. You can watch several YouTube videos about ustads discussing zikir breath. In this breath, there is a defined energy. You don't understand that as long as we oppress this is breath with actions that we consider to be simple macro. Try waking up at 40 o'clock in the morning and breathe in as much and as deep air as possible. How does it feel? How do we think after receiving oxygen that has not been mixed with the breath of hypocrites just gone right? Relationship and culture are actually not the reason for young people to start having first date with their friends. A weak mindset that says if you are not the same as most people, then you are a weak point. There are two examples of people in this century: a boxer who has died, a Muslim boxing legend, and the other figure is a Christian footballer. I don't need to mention his name. The first one I will explain as a simple is this Christian football player, but his lifestyle takes the essence of what the most influential people in history have exemplified. Role models, example of the maintaining concern about what gets into the body, when to sleep, and so on. Undoubtedly, he had it without realizing it. Meanwhile, for most of us, Muslims who are still young in the hope of this revival, quite a few have forgotten the habits taught by the Prophet ﷺ. In fact, almost 80% of their lifestyle tends toward habits, sorry, of infidels, which limits the health and genetic inheritance of the next generations. Does this mean that this is a normal thing based on cultural reasons and era differences? No, by Allah, no. This is a setback because the last Mujahideen were defeated, Muhammad al-Fatih, and you have to remember, we are in an era where Allah's earth, which allows Muslim humans to become caliphs, is being dominated by people who deny it and are full of hatred. I don't realize the figure of the famous football player, but I took a real example when a group of young people say to their friends beside him, "Do you smoke? Why do you choose to walk when you have a vehicle to just walk a few hundred meters? This is good for your long-term health." Then the questioner answered himself to his friends who was asked the questions. They asked, "You are weak if you don't smoke, even though this thing is not completely damaging." If I have a friend who asks me a question about that, I will take the example of the two athletes who could be differences and be heartwarming with question back. Are you greater than Ronaldo or the late Muhammad Ali in terms of achievements? Which called does Ronaldo smoke? Muhammad Ali was also someone who always carried mats everywhere, but he didn't smoke because that was his choice. He's a non-Muslim and you are Muslim, but you are more unjust than him when it comes to protecting the body and truth by God. And why does Ronaldo, who doesn't smoke, have a good body and good health? And is he weak man because he chose not to smoke like me? Look at your stomach, bloat, uncanned, eating carelessly, spending money to buy pills, even though this hanging out has become peace for us all. But I don't blame the cigarette or cigarettes you consume, but your way of thinking so that this thing makes you the devil in our friendship. Since one was the calmness of life and whether a person was weak or not measured by objects, maybe it's not drugs, but it has poisoned your way of thinking. This thing does not make your heart if your DNA is strong, and it is your choice in terms of prolonging your breath and come through this thing. But haven't you learned that life is not just for you? You smoke among your friends who smoke, that's fine. But if you are in a place full of passive smokers, it is very dangerous for the heart in that their cells refuse. The cells follow their master order to be reluctant to accept. If you do that in a public place, you are a devil who just wants to enjoy life without caring about your surroundings. Once again, this is not about cigarettes, but this is about the way you think and how you manage your thoughts with cigarettes. Look, A good friend is the one who dares to criticize his friends even though it is a pain that must be accepted, saving him from defeat by the devil that controls him. Well, but it's not about cigarettes or about the two athletes, but about how we should feel ashamed when our young people are so weak in terms of thought patterns and forming living habits according to what God taught through the figures of the apostle. Any religion teaches about intelligent and healthy lifestyle and thought patterns. It would also be useless to boycott action from several countries in the world simultaneously. Sorry, if all countries don't boycott cigarettes, everything will be questions. So let's make those questions less difficult to answer by not worrying too much about the pleasures of life, unnecessary culture, and focusing more on what Muslims should instill in themselves from a young age. It's not a matter of whether you have immigrated or not, but focus on maintaining the important things without having to harm our generations by not loving yourself like anything I mentioned and explained before. If it's a sin, then the sin is enough for ourselves and our affairs with God. So guard yourself from the sins that cause us to spread it to other creatures. So get up, come on, my young people. What are you waiting for? We can enjoy youth without having to be far from knowing ourselves and knowing God, the creator of heaven and earth, who says that the world cannot be enjoyed by young people who leave their youth behind. The golden age period. There are many ways to live, many ways to think, and there are many examples of the lives of our friends at a young age who remain the same as their friends at time but still don't abandon their monotheism, their hold, and don't oppress their minds and hearts. Let's use youth to create a future full of resurrections, because one of the groups that Allah will bless on the day of judgment is the group of young people whose hearts are linked to Allah, so the ones that grace by living a life full of prestige and covered in the sins. Sins done need to be sons of. Remember for future generations what we plant in the cells of our bodies. I want us to reflect a little, as parents, as young people, with sunnah and habits of the Prophet. Do we evident 80% enough? I didn't ask which ones had been implemented or maintained, because I was sure there would be a minimal answer from within. I'm surprised only in Indonesia, a Muslim majority country that provided social assistance to victims of online gambling. In contrast to Singapore, a small, developed country, but with a majority of non-Muslims actually provided prison sentences and large fines to online gambling perpetrators. So, my view as a Muslim who has lived in Indonesia for quite a long time is that it's not because natural resources are not well managed that is the reason why Indonesia is having difficulty rising and becoming a developed country, but because it's a Muslim majority country, full of ulama unity, full of soul, democracy, but Islamic law was largely abandoned. Even in worldly law, regardless of religion, there is no law that stands honestly, so who's to blame? Don't let Indonesia, with its held by foreign countries so long for them to rise quickly, instead become the second Palestine. Do not let, by Allah, with the strength that Allah has lent me, I want to move the hearts of Muslim friends and brothers in Indonesia to let's live our lives more honestly, because we will all be held accountable. Remember that the lone things that are in the sunnah and matters of the afterlife. In worldly matters, we are inferior to groups of people and countries that don't know the Quran. Even though it was the golden Muslim era, look at the word science which was successfully created from the extraordinary intelligence of creatures called humans. Muslim inventors, see how they get this knowledge. I'm not urging us, as young people, to have discoveries beyond them, but only so that we are the ones who have ruined it. What happens is the opposite. You make enemies of your own neighbor. I heard news that there are several martial arts schools in Indonesia, a Muslim-majority country, that are betting on each other's strengths and attacking each other for whatever reason. Muslim boxer Muhammad Ali always stood and praised the religions of Allah at every entertainment, even he is invited to. How he taught me that preaching is not limited to the words or the mosque. Preaching in your own way, in your field, then preaching and remind each other is the obligations of all of us. Is it perhaps worth differing fatwas regarding the details of halal and haram laws? It is the job of the ulama, the guardians of Allah. Aren't you embrace? Look at the Quran, read what Allah says in it about our real enemies. The young people who were brawling didn't understand what the late Muhammad Ali exemplified about the wisdom of self-defense. What is the sense of learning self-defense? It's like memorizing the Quran but not knowing how to apply it to achieve the wisdom and goals that must be learned. Muhammad Ali once said in one of his final fights that self-defense means protecting each other, and there's no such thing as which martial art is the best and greatest, because in a sense, Muslims are brothers and must protect each other. In fact, this ability is not something to brag about, because people who really understand and are professional in this field will actually use it more wisely. This is a form of praising also from a boxer. The verses of the Quran are applied according to their field. Muslims protect each other, not harm each other, let alone humiliate each other, because Satan is your real enemy. Never mind Muslims like him, like Khabib and others, a Muay Thai fighter who is known to be serious in the ring, is actually a friendly person, and jokes around outside the ring with everyone, not arrogant about his strength. So, we're the same in us, when we cannot be wise in standing on God's earth by boasting of the strength he has lent us. Arrogance is also proud of shirk, because we date ourselves on the basis of demeaning others and consider our power to come purely from ourselves. Even Rasulullah, a man who is also called a ninja from the desert, a fighter, Sayyidina Ali, Umar, bin Khattab, Khalid bin Walid, and the conqueror of the Constantinople, and had heroic soul. They were fighters, but understand which arm should be fought, whether who brought in the name of self-defense, collates, or power. That's what happens when the heroic soul has the wrong sword and the flow flows in the wrong direction. The estuary will be polluted and dirty until he cleans it himself through Sufism, harmonious ihsan, pillars that most Muslims today forget. I'm also not proud, but one time I attended a graduation ceremony for memorizers of the Quran in several Islamic boarding schools. Declaring their graduates is not how much the children memorize, but what about the verses from the Quran, encouraging the benefits of living together, the verses from the Quran about how business should be, how education should be, how health should actually be implemented, about how people in the golden age of Islam got all this knowledge even though there was no formal education. We are busy defining our work, leaving our physical strength, leaving our cell phones to the point of having a digital soul these days. The technology that has been created doesn't even make our relationship stronger. On the contrary, we are busy with each other, teammates. All children are all the greatest memorizers and are expected to be able to carry it. It's true, but how good it would be as a weapon for the age of resurrections when even memorizers of the Quran don't understand how to use Allah's verses for the problems of the people in this world. So what about those who don't? It's not wonder that many Muslim leaders are unjust. Young people who are weak in faith and immunity, and those who understand this don't even dare to convey the truth. For the unhandful, there is no unity of the general. All agencies, institutions, agencies are just fighting a cold war on social media to show everyone whose system is the best. Even though whatever is best, everyone must unite to advance every existing field. In fact, we are lured into what is called imaging, not being able to differentiate between sharing happiness and motivation through social media and over-representing ourselves. On the other hand, we have this argument about the day of the epical lives, even though the scenes of the epical lives and the day of the epical lives are different. Although Muslim literacies today, we are weak in Iqra reading. No Muslim will see the destructions of the Qur'an epical lives, the epical lives that in fact our current situation has been successfully stolen, colonized and enslaved our minds and consciousness. By whom? By those who are hostile to God's earth. Young people are still busy with their endless search for true love, with the capital of not being able to differentiate between loving and falling in love. Then they decide to marry the person who can make them fall in love, not the person they deserve to love. Then all leaders are busy with how much power they can retain, and ordinary people are busy betting on wealth and poverty. There's no more reminding each other. The religion is like a ritual, not a spiritual energy that gives fictional power and great hope for collective awakening. And we end up turning that neglectful business into an idol. We forget our duty to immediately rise up and destroy the enemies of Allah who have been deceiving us, tricking our economy, making our young people die before they are old, and they have no strength at home to raise their respective highest consciousness. Our body cells are made to die with excessive laughter and dread frequencies that we cannot control our views, and we end up tyrannizing our own bodies by not giving them time to just get enough sleep, or sleep at a time that suits the body's own system. Once again, I remind this as a practitioner of Allah's oath in Surah Al-Asr, and for discussion about metaphysics, how Muslim education should be carried out, and a little about non-Muslim countries that are even advanced in thought even though they don't understand the Quran. I will discuss it in the next video, so let's really apply the verses of Allah on this earth in every field, gradually strengthen, unite again, and eliminate the Cold War. Remember again that our only enemies are Shaitan and the coarse devil. Striking out monotheism and don't do anything that I mentioned before but was quite good. And it would be a real loss if we didn't learn how to manage this time in youth. Our enemies on God's earth, they only live a little time, while God's earth, especially the Indonesian nation, a country that can become a superpower in a short time, lasts a lifetime. I love this nation because I have lived in it, and I love it. I love you. This video is an opening and general overview first. Later I will explain in more depth in the next video and share knowledge about each of the areas that actually influence each other. There is not enough time for this part. It cannot be separated consciously, so I have to continue. Because this is the one who creates egocentrism, creates static human, is not dynamic as humans who believe in God. You can send important information, reasoning, your response about the phenomena that happened to me via the other email, acousticb@gmail.com, in the form of type several pages, at least 5 or 10 are allowed. More is also allowed for us to convey and discuss in other videos.